Hi, I'm Nate.
And I'm Tessa.
And welcome to our wedding! Before we get started today,
we wanted to tell you some stories about how we got together.
And how we got to be where we're at right now.
At our wedding. So, I met Nate. In San Francisco. I heard about him for a long time before I met him. Our mutual friend Darcy was my roommate and had used to live in Oregon, and where Nate's from. And he was a rock and roll guy, and he used to put on shows. And Darcy was telling me, hey, you know, this guy who, you know, might want to know about him, and, you know, you do shows sometimes, and maybe you guys could talk music or something. He only lived three blocks away from me, and we both worked evenings. So he would come and hang out with me after he got off of work, and then we would ride the bus home together.
It was good times. Except I was getting really, really lonely, and I started crying a lot. And one day I went over to Tessa's house, and I was just kind of sharing with her how much I hated life. And she started praying for me, and she said, man, there's a lot of fear and bitterness in you. And I'd never really thought that I had very much fear or bitterness. And she really just put a spotlight on where my heart was at. And the next 2 years I ended up spending dealing with fear and bitterness because I had a lot in me. And the reason that came to the surface was because of Tessa. And I really started valuing her as a friend. But we still couldn't be together because I didn't like her.
And I sometimes would think maybe I liked him, but then there were times I definitely didn't, and we could never be together.
And we told lots of people all these excuses why we couldn't be together. We couldn't communicate. Sometimes I just couldn't stand to be around her. And I'd find myself, you know, kind of starting to develop this pendulum swing. Sometimes she was my best friend, and other times I was like, gotta hang out with somebody besides Tessa. And it would just go back and forth and back and forth.
And to be quite honest, I didn't really love his music very much at the time. I could never be with someone if I didn't love their music, if I couldn't support them in that.
After a while of us convincing ourselves that we could never be together, we started going on these things that we refer to as not dates, where I'd take her to a Christmas party, or we'd go see a movie. We watched National Treasure together, and we were the last ones in the theater.
And he paid,
and
but
it
it
sure
was
felt
not
like a date. But it wasn't. But I started getting really confused because of this pendulum swing started going back and forth, and I asked God, I'm like, why? Why do I love her and hate her at the same time? And I felt that he said, when it happens, I'm there. Which meant, to me, well, when you guys are together and it's going good, I'm there.
And it's true. Man, when we hang out together and we pray for people together, I get to see his heart, and I get to see our lives connecting, and I get to see that we care about a lot of the same things.
And it kind of put a weird burden on me because I couldn't like her. I told so many people I couldn't stand her half the time. So after a couple years in San Francisco, I decided I was going to move and go on tour. And I got a big green van.
I loved the van so much. I was so jealous that he got to ride around in a van and I was stuck in San Francisco still.
This whole time I was starting to like Tessa more and more, but I couldn't tell her. Because after all, I was about to go get in my van and drive around the country for 6 months, and that's not a good way to be a boyfriend.
And I was thinking, oh, Nate's moving away. I guess that's the end of that. Well, oh well. I wasn't really that concerned because I wasn't, you know, I was going to miss him as a friend a lot, but I had already marked him off of my list of possible suitors.
Little did she know.
And about a week later, I put in his CD, and I listened to the CD, and I read the liner notes, and I read the zine that he made, and through that whole hour of just soaking it up, something shifted in my heart, and I finally got it, and I was like, oh, that's why Nate makes his music. That's what it's about. Like, it's encouraging to people, and it's kind of hopeful, and it's sympathetic and caring, and anyway, it was all things I couldn't recognize before. And so I called him and apologized. And I called and I was like, Nate, I'm sorry for not being a very good friend, and I didn't really get your music, and I didn't support you as much as I should have, and now you're gone, and I'm really sorry that I didn't support you better, and I'd like to in the future.
And I accepted her apology. Because one of the things that we learned through our time in San Francisco is that for our friendship to survive, we had to have a clean slate. Which meant that every couple weeks or every couple months, we'd have to sit down and tell each other how we were annoying each other. And we'd have to forgive each other and learn to make differences and compromises. And that's what our friendship ended up being based about, was communication and being able to resolve things. And so I'm still on the road and I'm thinking, man, this girl's really awesome. I bet we could build something together. But at the same time, I wasn't totally convinced I could tell her I liked her. And I was driving around the country, and we'd still talk on the phone every night. And I ended up in Columbus, Ohio. And I had a friend, Eric, there, who sang a song that really convicted my heart, that I'd built up some walls against, some walls with false definitions of beauty that had kept me from really seeing how awesome Tessa was. And so that night I went home and I prayed, and I really felt God convicted my heart through Eric's song that, you know, I'd judged Tessa when I shouldn't have. And so I started really searching inside my heart about, like, what have I said that wasn't true about this woman? And I found a whole laundry list of things that I'd done wrong. And I had to say I'm sorry, and I had to kind of work them through in my heart. And after about that month, I called up Leo, who is my pastor and friend, who's marrying us in a few minutes, and said, I think I like Tessa, and I'm going to tell her I like her. And we talked through the whole thing, and then I called my parents, and I told them I liked her. And my mom thought, man, something must have changed. Because we definitely had expressed our disinterest in each other. And
So summertime came, and I really wanted to go to Cornerstone Festival.
at the same time, I was kind of scheming that she'd maybe come join me on tour. And so we agreed that she was going to fly out and meet me at her dad's house in North Carolina.
And so I'm all excited about going to Cornerstone Festival, and I'm really looking forward to it, as I always do. But this year in particular, you know, I just turned 30, I'm still single, haven't really dated anybody.
She was going on a manhunt.
I was...
Yeah.